Hey, it's Monica B, creator of HeyMonicaB.com, a blooming resource on Ayurveda, and author of In Your Elements, a blooming Ayurvedic guide to creating your best life. Today, we are going to talk about the best foods for each dosha. And I know you all love to ask me questions about the foods and what foods are the best for you. So I thought we'd give a little overview today of the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and which foods are best for each one and why. So you can make good decisions going forward on, what to choose to eat, because we get so confused. Sometimes we go searching around on online articles, what foods are best for me? Why is my digestion all messed up? Like what should I be eating now? Well, and the truth is once you understand why and what types of foods you should be eating in general, that confusion will lift. You won't be searching outside for what to eat, because you'll be searching inside here on guidance for what to eat, and I'll give you the Ayurvedic foundations for each of them. There's crows, if anybody can hear crows, like they're crowing around in the trees, so they want to learn about this too. Okay, so Vata dosha, remember, is the energy of movement, and the qualities of Vata are cold, light, dry, rough, mobile. Okay, and so remember, we want to use the opposite qualities to balance that. So Vata type foods should be warm, heavy, and oily in general. If that confuses you, just think of comfort foods. And Vatas, for sure, do not skip the oils, because Vatas tend to be dry and they might drink enough water, but water is not the same thing as oil. It is, it makes things wet, but it doesn't always lubricate all the way down to our deepest tissues like oils does. Oils gets all the way into our deepest tissues to strengthen and nourish and keep things built. So overall, Vatas have that very light and windy quality about them. Their foods are going to need to build them and keep them built. So warm, heavy, oily type foods, think comfort foods like oatmeals, rice dishes, could be pasta dishes. Vata diet in general will be carb happy, warm vegetables, and could even do warmer fruits like baked apples or baked pears. Just think warm, cozy, oily or kind of goopy foods for Vata to keep that dryness at bay and to bring the heaviness, or they're going to fly away like a kite without a string. So no foods for Vatas are, right? They're not going to eat big quantities of food. It's going to mess up Vata digestion. They can't handle that much food at one time anyway. So no on the large quantity, no super cold foods, no raw foods, no icy foods, nothing with bubbles in it, because the bubbles go up and they're full of air and space, and we want to keep the motion down and out going through, right? So no bubbles for Vatas especially. They'll go for the crunchies, they'll go for the candies, all of that stuff too. Not good for Vata. The crunchy stuff is just too dry for Vata, and the candies are just going to jack them up. They usually reach for candy or something sweet because of the lack of grounding and heaviness that they're getting from other things. Vatas have this weird thing where they're afraid of gaining weight. Right? They're like, they want to be hyper conscious over what they're eating. And so they will eat all of these very light foods, and they're the ones that are searching for the articles and like looking, making sure, I gain weight. But the trick is that Vatas don't gain weight easily at all if they eat the right foods. Vatas fail when they don't eat the right foods. They're eating salads, they're eating super light things, they're hyper aware of what they're eating, and then they eat, and then an hour later they're like, I need Sour Patch Kids. And they got to go get a quick fix from like some kind of sugar, some kind of candy or something to quick fix and help them feel more stable, which doesn't really work with things like snackies and cookies and all of that stuff. They get their grounding through their heavier foods, through their meals. That make good sense? Okay, so basically, and in general, all Vata foods should be warm. In summer, they can get away with it a little bit more. They can get away with foods that aren't necessarily super warm and goopy, but for the most part, Vatas are going to have warm foods. Okay, let's move on to Pitta. Pitta is hot, sharp, slightly oily, smooth, and mobile. And so their foods are going to be mild because of that sharpness, right? We want to have mild foods, like mild spices. Their foods should be heavy enough. Pitta has the fire element in them, so they can make their way through food faster, and therefore they need food that has more sustenance to it. They would burn through, if they ate like a Vata, that would be okay, but they would burn through the food faster, and then they'd be like, I'm hungry again, I didn't have enough sustenance. So for Pitta, the best foods are heavy, they can be cooling or warm-ish, and mild in spice. So they should have good proteins with their foods. So let's say they can have like the legumes, the things that are gonna make Vatas really tooty, like beans, like garbanzo beans or black beans, pinto beans, all those kinds of things. They do well with nuts. They can have some meats. White meats or fish is recommended. Red meats can be a bit heating for Pittas, so Pittas mind that. But they need that extra protein because it is more difficult for their fire to make the way through the food. And that is a good thing for a Pitta person. They have strong digestion. It's okay to give them more of that food that takes a while to process because that's what they need. Okay, these are the no foods for Pittas. So not super spicy. We're gonna do stuff that's not too fermented or pickled or pickly. Peppery things, very hot, pungent things for Pittas, no good. Super salty foods for Pittas, no good. Acidic or sour foods for Pitta, no good. All of these things bring in extra heat. Okay, even the salt. And the salt has an interesting action on the mind where it builds confidence. For Vatas, salt is great. For Pittas, not so much because it has this, it builds confidence, right? Vatas tend not to have so much confidence. Pittas can get overconfident. They can get ego-y. Do it my way. Blah, 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 salty, right? So, anyways, for Pitta, those are the things to look out for. But fresh fruits, vegetables, anything that's cooling. You could do your melons, you could do your stone fruits. The only fruits that aren't really advised for Pitta are the citrus fruits. And those might even be okay in winter for Pitta types because it's chillier outside. It's not quite as hot. So, margarita with salt and lime sitting in the hot sun, no bueno for Pitta. They're going to get red and blotchy and cranky and hot, sweaty. All right, let's move on to kapha. So kapha qualities are cold, heavy, static, wet, and smooth, right? So the best foods for kapha are going to be light and dry and spicy. Then you're like, what's a dry and light and spicy food? You take like a pretzel and put cayenne pepper. No, those kinds of foods are more, think like Asian inspired foods, not like German potatoes and gravy and all that stuff, but like Asian inspired food, like spring rolls, nice vegetables, rice noodles. If they have some kind of sauce on it, it's a light, like garlic, ginger, very brothy, thin sauce that's not heavy and goopy. Heavy and goopy would be the worst thing for kaphas because they are heavy and goopy. They're gonna feel more heavy and sluggish with that food. They want to feel bright and alive and spicy and movement and hot and oh yeah, bring it on. So vegetables, vegetarian diet for kapha is the best because they are already built. Remember how I said that Vatas don't have a lot holding them together? They're flimsy in nature, right? And they need foods to help them be built. Well, kapha's got opposite. Kapha is already built. Kapha type people. And so they don't need more food that's going to keep building them. They're going to get overbuilt, which is why they can feel weight gain, right? They can notice they're like, hey, I don't know why I gained weight easily. Well, it's just because maybe the foods that a kapha person is eating is too much building. So vegetarian, great for kapha. Add some of those nice spices, add some ginger, have a little bit of garlic with that. Add some, even black pepper, so good for pitta. So good for kapha. They're gonna love to spice that up. So, let's see, light grains are really good for kapha. So like couscous, quinoa, Barley is like a kapha superfood because it puffs up like a puffy rice, like puffed rice. But anyways, puffs up like that. And they can have it in soup with like barley vegetable soup. Really nice. It's lovely filling without feeling too heavy. And it's a light grain. So those things are good for kapha. In general, kapha should favor vegetarian. They do not need the heaviness of another animal to be building their tissues. They are quite built already. Okay, no foods for kaphas are, watch the dairy. Some dairy is okay for pitta. Dairy in general is okay for vata. For pitta, the dairy should be sweeter. So for pitta, dairy should be like mozzarella cheese, maybe cottage cheese. Milk is okay. Butters are okay. But as soon as you get into like the blue cheese, the gorgonzola, pitta is going to get heartburn. I know we're talking about kapha, but I thought I'd touch on the dairy since I mentioned that. In general, dairy is going to be too heavy for kapha. Again, kapha doesn't really need meat. Notice it. So now kaphas, if you're going, oh, but I eat meat. Cool. Try it and then just see how you feel. And then maybe try a couple meals without meat and see how you feel. That's what this Ayurveda is all about, right? Like we're going to learn some things. We're going to try some things. We're going to measure and see how it feels with our own self. And then we're going to make decisions based on that. Either we're going to continue what feels good. Actually, we're just going to continue what feels good. And we're going to leave the rest and say, hey, that's not for me. Okay. Very sweet things, not so great for kapha. It is going to build, it's another building type foods, and nothing cold, goopy, or heavy, which brings me to my final point today, and that is yogurt. Let's talk about yogurt, shall we? Yogurt is cold, goopy, wet, heavy, static. It's basically not good for any of the doshas. It also clogs channels. Now, I know that like if you go to Indian cuisine, they have the raita, they have a little bit of yogurt on the plate. Let's take a look at that for a second. They have a little bit of yogurt on the plate. A little bit of yogurt. They do not have a container of super thick yogurt that you're eating every single day, because that stuff will dampen Agni, it will clog channels, it is sour, it is cold, it is goopy. It doesn't work for the long term. If you're eating lots and lots of yogurt, will you please take my challenge and don't eat yogurt for 2 weeks and see if your digestion improves? Please, will you just try it? Just try it. If you're jonesing for yogurt and you really like that taste and it tastes cooling, it might taste cooling at first, but it actually digests hot and sour. No good for pitta, right? Make a lassi. A lassi is you take 1/3 part yogurt, 2 parts, well, let's just say 1 part yogurt, 2 parts water. You take it and you churn it. You could even use a whisk, or you could use one of those mallet-y wooden things, and you churn it for 2 minutes until it gets frothy. You can add a little ginger powder. You can add a little bit of sugar to taste. You can add some cardamom powder. You could add some cinnamon, anything to make it good and tasty. It will be light and frothy and liquid, and heat has been introduced to the churning, and that opens the channels. It's actually very good for digestion. You don't need a whole thing of it. Like I even see people with their smoothies that got like a liter of smoothie, and then they're wondering why their digestion's not functioning because it's too cold. So just a little bit of lassi, a little cup would be so nice. Have that, but leave the yogurt. Okay. If you like this, if you want more resources on the foods for the doshas, I'll put a link below for the dosha menus. You can click on and download those. Totally cool. I'll provide that for you. And also, if you don't have it yet, I have an awesome book with all this stuff in it. It's called In Your Elements, and you can find it on Amazon. I'll also put a link below here so you can find that. But it is, in my opinion, the prettiest book on Ayurveda I have seen. I created it, so it's special in in my heart, and it's got all these things we've been talking about, including different menu ideas, including when to eat the meals, and all of those things for each of the doshas, as well as good little nuggets in the sidebars, and it's just chock full of really good information. It also goes into the certain tastes that are good for the doshas, certain spices that are good for the doshas, the actions the spices have on the body, etc. It's a big book. Go check it out in your elements. Okay, you guys. And with that, now you're going to take all this good knowledge and you're going to keep bringing this Ayurveda to life. Yes, you are. Mwah.